the release notes, so covering everything that has been pushed out with this firmware. Number one is adding that slope function. We'll walk through that here in just a minute. Also adding live mission recording to linear routes. So being able to help automate some of those transmission line inspections, especially if you have really poor or just not great background satellite imagery or elevation data. So you can kind of automate that in the field from a very safe perspective. We also have an elevation optimization function in the linear route mission. We also have a custom breakpoint. That's another one that I am really excited about and have had issues before. Smart photo mode for waypoint route. So this is going to be something to help you take photos of, photos of assets in low lit conditions. We also have a show AR return to home route function. So we're bringing a lot of AR into the Pilot 2 app so you can see what the drone is going to be doing next, whether it's returning to home or flying an actual mission. And then adding in a white balance setting to the camera. We do have a couple different optimized features there as well. So diving right in, the slope route function, think of this as being a straight facade capture where you can go completely parallel to a building, or you can pitch it X, Y, or Z axis essentially. And so you can be able to do high wall inspections, things like that. So we're pretty excited about this one. It does require you to utilize the RTK module for the Mavic 3 Enterprise and the Mavic 3 Thermal. That is because as we're working so close to facades, we want to make sure that we have very accurate flights. And if we're just using traditional GPS, we may be off a couple feet. And when you're capturing this close to an asset down, 10 or 15 feet, that can make a big difference. So pre-flight, connect RTK, make sure it's fixed, whether it's a base station or using a course network. Step one is creating an AR projection of your captured area. And let me actually, if we go back, you can kind of see all of the steps. I'm going to be breaking them down more specifically in each slide. So let's go through the pre-flight, step one and step two here. So in pre-flight, you're making sure RTK is fixed. You're going to be using the aircraft's wide camera would be recommended. That's your, especially on the Mavic 3 Enterprise, that's your mapping camera, 4/3 inch and mechanical shutter. You're going to be choosing the single photo mode, but it's a mapping mission, so essentially it's going to default for you. Make sure the distance between the drone and the captured area is within 150 meters, so fly up to within 450 feet of the facade or of the high wall that you're looking to map, and then adjust the camera towards the capture area. So obviously, if you're doing a building, that's going to be looking at your gimbal angle here. You can see it's at -7, adjusting that for 0. Or if you're doing a high wall, you do need to have a little bit of an angle there. You are going to be pressing C1 to generate the AR projection. So we have new route. It's very quick. I should have probably been playing it the entire time. Let me slow it down. So you plan a new slope route. That's what the icon looks like. When you press, you'll back off the facade. You'll press C1, and then it's going to capture a photo for you that you're going to be doing mission planning on. So you press C1, you can see that capture just be taken. And now we can start adjusting that flight plan. So adjusting the AR projection settings. So essentially this blue mat that we're editing here, that is what we want to cover whatever facade that we're capturing. So we take the points, we adjust those to the edges of the facade. Then we're going to be setting the distance to slope from actual subject. So that's your GSD. We can go all the way down at this point to less than 0.1 centimeters. So, you're looking at millimeter GSD at this point. You can then fly off the side of the asset and make sure that the drone understands where the facade is. I've noticed that sometimes when you're flying it, it kind of sets it a little bit farther away from the facade. So I will often fly over to the side and have to bump this distance back a couple meters so that it's set right on the facade. And then also you can adjust the X and the Y angle axes. So if the building, if you didn't take a picture perfectly parallel to the building and you need to go in there and adjust that, or if you need to slope it away from you, you can as well, if it's going to be that high wall and you want it to be at an angle. So you can see the adjustments on the X if we didn't have it orientated right when we first took the photo, and then we can adjust the Y there for doing high wall. You can also see a little bit of a video of another feature that we just brought. At this point, we can just adjust mission settings like you would for a normal mission, where you're setting in the GSD, you're setting in, and that'll adjust your distance to slope. You can be down to, you can see 3 meters from the asset. So from the facade, about 10 feet away, you're looking at really high GSD there. And then you can also, I could have backed it up there, you can adjust the slope. Did it play that? There we go. Not the slope, but you can adjust if your mission is going to be going vertically or going horizontally as well. So you can scan from the top down, or you can be going up and down and scanning that way. At this point, we can go ahead and just execute the mission. You're setting in your camera parameters, going through the pre-flight checks, and you're going to see the drone. Go ahead, go to the first waypoint, start capturing imagery. You also want to keep checking on that flight assistant camera at the bottom left camera to make sure that you're having flight safety. So you're going to be watching the drone, making that map or moving across the waypoints on that wide photo that you took earlier. And then you can also, in the bottom right, look through the obstacle avoidance cameras to see if you're coming up on any obstacles close to the facade. Also, make sure that your obstacle avoidance is on. You're really going to need that for facade missions. So, complete process. Did I? Just walking through. So basically, you're going to hit new facade mission. You're going to be within 150 meters of the facade. You're going to have this blue polygon that you're going to adjust to the facade. You fly off to an angle to make sure that your polygon is set to the right distance off the facade. You can adjust your XY for pitch if you're doing high wall, or if you didn't take it perfectly parallel to the building, your start photo, and then from there, setting in your normal mapping mission settings, GSD, side lap, front lap. You can also use this icon there to move around your facade if you need to. You can click into that camera to just double check flight safety. And then you'll set your parameters. And that is basically it. I do have another screen recording, I thought. Here we are. So here's one that I was able to grab of a grain facility facade, and you can see all of the AR dedication that we're doing as well. Sorry, folks. Trying to get it to go to one spot. So you can see the actual mission in AR on facade. I think that's pretty cool. You can also then fly around a little bit and see if your mission, any of those flight lines are going to be running it close to any obstacles. You can see in the bottom left-hand corner the facade that I'm capturing. Cool. This was a data capture, pretty much completely autonomous. 2,422 photos of this grain facility, and when I click after I processed in Terra, you can see all of those capture locations I was able to automate. So a smart oblique capture to capture the very top down. You can also do a point of interest orbit mode that I did at the very top here, and then did some facades for doing some crack detection. Also highlighting the ability of Terra as a photogrammetry engine. For capturing facades, we're typically going to be building very vertical 3D models. Sometimes those can be of thin structures. I have found that DJI Terra has been pretty much the best up there with context capture as far as 3D reconstruction of thin structures and of verticals. So as we get into facade, more facade missions being automated, I'm really excited about this and the ability of Terra. I also just threw in here a quick screen video of Drone Deploy because they have an automated facade reporting tool. So you can very similarly click into those capture locations and then highlight an area of that photo and tag someone within your team of that inspection. Live mission recording, moving on to the next feature. This is one that I put on LinkedIn maybe a week or two ago, where you can automate the live mission recording of linear. So what you're going to be able to do is just fly over each spot, each tower, if you're doing transmission lines, drop a pin, and then it's going to build a flight plan based off of those pins that you drop. So you're always going to try to stay the same altitude off the ground, off that tower, and then you can, in areas of, once again, very difficult terrain, where digital terrain models that you import in, whether it's downloaded from the internet, only being 30-meter resolution, or even stuff that you may pull off the internet and import from a different source. You know, if you're having large elevation changes, oftentimes flying it manually and dropping pins on the tower is going to be a safer mission than and can be done in the field rather than doing a lot of pre-mission planning on something like UGCS. Also, for just areas that you don't have very good connectivity or the background imagery is not very great, then it's going to be very beneficial to plan those missions. And once again, live mission recordings can be replayed. So you don't have to do this before every time you go out and do the same inspection. You just need to do it once. You're saving that flight route if you're flying with RTK with very accurate flight parameters, and you can just automate that mission from there on. So let's talk about how to use. Essentially, you're going to be making a mission much like a facade or an area mission, but you're going to be clicking on linear route. From there, you will have a new option for a live mission recording. And when you tap on that, it's going to give you a breakdown of what is going to happen. You'll have C1 and C2 are going to be your primary and secondary action buttons. C1 is going to be dropping where your pin is for that live mission recording. And if you accidentally drop one or press C1 along the route, or if you drop it too low or too high, you can press C2 to delete the most recent one. So we'll drop a pin. You're also going to see these pins in AR mode. So as the drone turns around and goes back and views these towers, you're going to see where all of those pins are saved. And that's pretty much it. There are a couple different options here of doing a zigzag or a single route option. Here is what happens once I start a new mission. This is just from the main library page. I hit the plus button, create a route, and then I'm doing linear route and live mission recording. From there, it's going to give you those instructions once again. And then I'm just going to go through, fly over each one of these transmission lines, and then aim the gimbal down. If you are doing this with the L2, we just released a firmware update not too long ago that adds the laser rangefinder. So if you are looking for very accurate drop pins, you can also use that tool. As I come back and finish my very last tower, I can then fly off the route and I can kind of see those pins each in AR view. And then from there, I'll click save, and it's going to bring up a normal mapping mission where I can set in my parameters. You can see I'm just flying perpendicular to the mission right now. I can adjust that to be parallel. I can adjust flight bands, side lap, overlap, single route, anything that you would like to right there. Just your normal mapping mission. But It's a great, safe way of automating those linear inspections of transmission lines, pipelines, definitely things that may have a lot of elevation change and you just have not been to that site before. Moving on to some of the other features that we just released, white balance and smart mode. So you can also now just adjust white balance. We have 4 different options. You can set it for auto, you can set it custom and actually set a true value for your color temperature, or you can set in 4 default color temperature settings. So sunny, cloudy, neon, and incandescent. So if you want to just lock in white balance for mapping purpose sake, you can definitely do that, or just leave it for auto for ease of use if you're just taking photography. But you can obviously adjust that now. Smart mode, this is newly added into the Waypoint mission. This feature increases the photo quality under low light conditions. So if you have an automated inspection flight and it's something where you don't have a long mission, you really want to just make sure to capture the best photos possible. If you're in very dim lit areas, or if it's very late in the day, we're going to put emphasis on that low light photo to make sure that we have good contrast within the photo. Oftentimes when we're planning these missions, when it's this smart mode, especially if we're looking at like the zoom shot, then you're working with a smaller sensor, you're working with rolling shutter, and so low lit photos can just traditionally be more difficult. So being able to add that in definitely helps when it comes to inspections. We also have a new custom breakpoint feature. This is if you are flying a mission and you have the drone get really close to something that obstacle avoidance says, I can't keep going. And you're not going to want to turn off obstacle avoidance just to try to make the corner. You don't want to try to refly the entire mission and just moving in that polygon a little bit, because all of that time and batteries just got wasted. I just want to jump around this corner really quick because there's an obstacle there. Now we have the custom breakpoint. I think there's a video. Maybe it was the bottom one. Yeah, you can now enter in a custom breakpoint. So when you go in to edit a mission, instead of fully editing that mission, you will have that button for custom breakpoint instead of editing it. So let's say your drone is just sitting there hovering because it's close to an obstacle. I can then just tap anywhere. Sorry about my mouse clicks. I can then just tap anywhere on the mission, and it's going to put in a new waypoint, wherever that is. I can then hit go and hit resume from breakpoint, and the drone is going to then go to the breakpoint rather than trying to continue the mission. So I can save that breakpoint, I'll hit play, but then resume it from the breakpoint. So now it's going to cut over and continue that mission for you. I'm excited about this one because I've ran into multiple situations where an object or an obstacle got in my way and I did not want to replan the mission completely. Slide assist. Now we're going to be able on the Enterprise series with Mavic 3 Enterprise, Mavic 3 Thermal, tapping into the vision cameras, those obstacle avoidance cameras. Remember, these are ungimbaled cameras, and so it's going to be a bit shaky, and they're also in black and white. But you can go in and touch, navigate to be able to switch which camera that you want to be looking at. You're going to be looking at the left, the right, the front, the back, bottom, top of the drone. You also have the ability of showing a new, when you hit return to home, you're going to have a new AR feature where the drone will actually fly with this green carpet path essentially for it, all the way back to the home landing location. Once it gets back to the home landing location, once it gets low enough, it's going to put a little home icon for you on the ground where it's going to be landing. That way you can safely check, am I hitting my landing pad? If I'm not using the landing pad, am I landing on any sort of other thing that might cause damage to the drone? So let me go ahead and play this video of just returning to home from a grain facility inspection that I captured about a week and a half ago. The drone flies all the way up to my safe return altitude. and then slopes all the way over. And then it starts coming back home for me. And as it's descending and landing, you will start seeing the little home circle get larger on where we see the drone landing. There we go. Perfect. So a lot of big feature updates for 9.1, 9.2, just to go back through to the main release notes. Slope in Facade automated mission, I'm really excited about. Linear route and dropping a live mission, that is very much for safety and going to be able to automate some flight inspections that are very tricky to do. Elevation optimization function to linear route as well. It's kind of like a normal mapping mission. Adding a custom breakpoint so we can get around those obstacles during a mapping mission to make that a lot easier rather than having to edit the polygon or start over. Adding in smart photo mode for waypoint route for those low light conditions, vision assist function, tapping into those vision cameras, another one that I'm really excited about just for overall enhanced flight safety. And then adding white balance setting, that's great for mapping, geospatial, and then showing the AR landing point function. So just more AR in the Pilot 2 app.